Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a review for you today from DC Comics. We're going to be talking about Gotham City, Year 1, Issue Number 2, written by Tom King, pencils by Phil Hester, inks by Eric Gapster, colors by Jordie Bellaire, and letters by Clayton Cowles, and the cover is also by Gapster and Bellaire. This is continuing off. We are in 1961 with the Waynes, Constance Wayne and Richard Bruce Wayne, and the kidnapping of Helena Wayne. And we are kind of following with Slam Bradley. He is a PI who was kind of hired to do the middleman work between the kidnapper and the Waynes. At the end of the first issue, his secretary, who was trailing Sue, who got him involved in the whole case, was sadly murdered. And that's kind of where we pick up on the second issue. Before I get started, please like, comment, subscribe. I always forget that. It does help this channel greatly. But without further ado, here we go. So we start out with the current commissioner of the Gotham City Police Force, remember, in 1961, and he's talking about the 6 different murders that happened over the past year and how they're all solved and closed cases. Then he goes into talking about Metropolis and how there was like 70 different murders over the last year and only 30 of them are closed cases, and talks about how Gotham City has a bigger population compared to Metropolis. But basically, after this, we find out that he's talking to Sam Bradley and trying to demonstrate a point and how much the GCPD is a better precinct and this and that. But basically, he's being accused of the murder because his friend had his gun on him at the time when he got murdered. Well, Slam Bradley does give this tale, and supposedly this is like the second night that they've been beating him and interrogating him, but he spins a tale that basically he was helping out a wife that believes her husband was cheating, and he was at this park all night long, and then he went home, got drunk, and went to sleep. He does tell the book that he was lying all along, and that the commissioner knows that he's lying. Well, basically, they can't keep him on the suspicion besides that, and they have several witnesses that said that his secretary used to carry his gun, with him without Bradley being there, kind of thing. So they do let Bradley go. He eventually goes home, tries to get some sleep, and when he makes it to his apartment, we see that Sue has returned and with instructions from the kidnapper. And basically, at this point, she is telling Bradley that she doesn't want to any kind of remorse or mean thoughts or anything towards her. She's a middleman just like him, kind of thing. What happened to his friend was basically them watching her and them taking action, and she kind of like refers that a lot. Basically, at this point, with Slam Bradley being pushed around by the Waynes and now by the police, Slam Bradley's kind of pissed off, and he's not really taking idle to the threats that are being said by Sue. And basically, he admits that it was his mistake to sending his friend Joe to follow her, and now that he's going to play on the up and up. And basically, he only has one more thing to say to the kidnappers, and basically like that they better keep the baby safe, kind of thing. Sue eventually goes home. And basically she's supposed to go back to the kidnappers and tell the kidnappers what Slam said and get the next part of the, hey, we're going to work with you thing. So the next day around 4 o'clock, he does receive a letter from, and at this point in the book they are deeming it Batman, that Batman is the kidnapper, especially because he is signing with the bat symbol. And Slam Bradley at this point refers to, I think twice or something like that, when he was talking to Sue, the kidnappers. So basically, they get the note, they take it to the Waynes, and it says the same thing. It's like $100,000 small bills, but this time there is an address, like you're going to go to this building, climb the top of the building, leave the money, and you're going to get the baby. The baby's fine, but you don't know how long this will go through or whatever. And basically, at this time, Richard Bruce Wayne states that he wants to be there during the delivery. Slam kind of goes against that. Constantine kind of speaks up for a second, and we see like a very angry and and brutal, because he's very mean to his wife in the scene, calling her names and stuff like that. But basically criticizing for him wanting to be there to save the baby. But basically, like, one of his henchmen mentions that they should, like, case the building, maybe have other guys around other buildings. Slam Bradley eventually says, hey, we've already had some problems and going outside the line. Let's just stay inside the line this time. There is a moment after, like, Richard leaves, and Slam has a moment to talk to Constance, and he's like, your husband was kind of rude. I think we need to stay in the line, kind of thing. And she just has this, like, fuck off, like, don't talk to me, like, you're just the hired help kind of moment. Extremely rude kind of thing. Basically, do what you're told. You don't need to talk, type of thing. We catch up with. And honestly, this is where, like, some of the most fantastic art in this book. I love the art. But basically, it's Richard and Slam. It's Richard, Bruce Wayne, and Slam Bradley in the car, and they're going to the drop-off. And, there's a conversation about, like, what he's willing to do and like, to save his daughter. And then there comes up a conversation with Slam, and he kind of mentions, how do you know I'm not a part of this? And Mr. Wayne's like, well, if you are, he was like, let me tell you two things. He was like, first, if you're doing this out of the kindness of your heart to help us just because you got involved with this, then those are definitely things that I want to reward. Honesty, all those good virtues and stuff. And then he goes into saying, but if you're part of the kidnapping and you've been conniving and sneaky and came up with this whole thing, he was like, I wouldn't reward that, but I might have some use for a person like that. And it just goes quiet in the car. They eventually do get to the building. They basically scale the building, and it's kind of dope how they do it with the fire exit colors. And basically they get all the way up there, and then Richard has a change of heart. He decides to stand outside the door. At this time, Bradley's like, alright, fine. He takes the money and he goes to the door. When he gets to the door, it's raining, and guess who's there? It's Sue, the person that's supposed to be another middleman. Basically, Sue's like, okay, drop the case. I'm supposed to be here to pick up the case. And he's like, yeah, I got the money. And she's like, oh, I don't know anything about any money. I was just told to pick up the case. And she's basically like, okay, once you give me the case, I'm going to give you this letter. And Sam's like, wait a minute, the instructions were we bring money and the baby, you're supposed to give us the baby, where's the baby? And she's like, oh, I don't know about any of that either. And she just holds out the letter, and this totally, like, reminded me of, like, Sin City right here, like, because she's just holding out the letter. They show Brad's hand, and they show, like, Brad walking away. He's like, nope. And that's exactly what he does. He turns around, walks back into the stairwell, finds Richard, and basically it's exactly how you think it would go down. Slam walks through telling him, hey, they didn't have the baby, so I didn't give them the money. Richard's like, man, we don't care about the fucking money. Go give them the money. This isn't your money. That's not your baby. He was all like, and Bradley's like, nah, man, something doesn't feel right. He was like, the deal was we give the money for the baby, and the baby's not there. He was like, I'm not giving this money just for a piece of paper. And basically Richard kind of flips out, pulls a gun on him, and he's like, no, you go out there and you give him the money, and that's that. This ain't your city, this ain't your town, this ain't your baby, your money. He's like, you do what you're told. And so basically Sam Bradley does just that. He goes back outside, he drops the money, she gives him the letter, and then kind of the weirdest thing happens. She walks over to the edge of the building, kind of says some weird random things, almost Mary Poppins-ish, and she kind of just walks off the side of the building. Bradley's kind of confused and weirded out about what happens, and because she just kind of walks off the side of the building. Bradley runs over to see her splattered on the ground, and sure enough, she didn't. She kind of backflipped and landed on the building like someone we kind of know. But basically, she runs off with the money safe and sound to a point where Slam Bradley cannot chase her on the rooftops. He's not that agile, kind of old, kind of thing. He runs back in and tells Richard what happened, gives him the letter. They read the letter, and it basically says, hey, the baby is safe. I dropped the baby off in a cemetery. That's, I think it was like his dead father and mother, like the cemetery, somebody that's related to the Waynes, something like that. But basically, they make it to the cemetery, and it says like something like Joanna and Mildred Wayne, something like, or Jonap is all you can read on the cemetery gravesite. But basically, they get to the cemetery, the baby is not there. They kind of scam the whole, cemetery. At this point, Richard is pretty much determined that Slam Bradley, all of this has been a gag, and he's been the one behind everything. Again, he pulls the gun, and at this point, Slam's just had enough, and he's like, screw this, and he ends up knocking out Mr. Wayne after he takes the gun from Mr. Wayne. And that's kind of where we just leave us off, is Mr. Wayne slumped over the graveside, and Slam's just kind of, he doesn't know where to go from this point. And but that is the where the book leaves us off. Honestly, I love the read. It's a great read. It's the art is fantastic. I love getting to know Slam Bradley, which I finally made that connection thanks to Ranger Sly. But there are some weird things like the racialness, the sexism. I don't think it's needed. I don't know why it's in the book. I understand that they're trying to be historic, but you don't need to be historical accurate. It's a comic, Expect, I don't know. It's kind of weird, and it's so small moments. I don't see why they would have left it in there. There is a warning at the beginning of the book. I don't know if I mentioned that states, hey, this book does have some language in it or whatever. Another problem I have with the book is trying to grasp where this fits in. I mean, I'm not familiar with Constance and Richard and all these other Waynes that the book wants to mention. Is this, Gotham City, Earth 17 or something? I wish that would be clarified, because I do know Elena Wayne, we do know Bruce Wayne, but it's just really weird how this connects and fits in, kind of thing. And then plus that, just some of the timing, Batman being a thing back in the 60s, or Catwoman being there. Yes, they started in the 30s in comics and stuff, but and we did have Batman in the 60s and Catwoman in the 60s, but in this continuity, it's supposed to be Gotham City Year One, way before, Batman would have been a thing, or Catman would have, Catwoman would have been a thing. So it's a little weird on that aspect. But as far as the read, the art, and everything, I loved it. I thought it was great. Hey, but that's my review. I'll see y'all later. Bye.